Hi everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I'm going to bring you my spoiler-free review of Furyborn, written by Claire Legrand. Furyborn is the first book in the Imperium trilogy. This is a young adult trilogy written by Claire Legrand that follows two different timelines. So we follow two different young women, Riel and Elena, and their storylines take place 1,000 years apart from one another. There is this legend of these prophesied queens, the Sun Queen and the Blood Queen, and it is believed that Eliana and Riel have some type of relationship to these queens and have something to do with the prophecy at hand. So we follow both different timelines 1,000 years apart. Riel's storyline directly affects what happens to Elena in her storyline 1,000 years later. So this was a really interesting book to follow along with. So let's get to the review. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the world building. I think that the strength of this book is going to be in the characters and less about the world building, just because there is not that much world building to begin with. We have the one timeline that takes place 1,000 years in the past, and we have the separate timeline that takes place 1,000 years in the future. And even though they're the same exact world, they feel very different, obviously because so much time has passed. The timeline that takes place in the past, this one feels kind of very, stereotypically Western European influenced royalty fantasy setting. We have a religious order, we have a royal family, we have a young woman who is not quite a part of the royal household, but her family has influence within the court. She does grow up within the castle walls, just being a playmate and best friend and confidant to the crown prince. His cousin is another one of her best friends, so we have this really great trio of characters that are within their teenage years. In the future, in the 1,000 years in the future timeline, this is where I found the most originality to the world building, because this timeline is really where we can see the effects of the different countries that are at war with one another. We have the empire. Within the different countries, people are living very different lives. Our character Elena, I'll get to her in a little bit, but she is a bounty hunter, and the reasons why she is bounty hunting is very intriguing because of all these political alliances, because of these different countries, because of the empire and its hold over the world at this moment in time, causes her to go into bounty hunting. So there's slums, there's guns that she ends up using, there's your regular knives and weaponry, there's a touch of magic that she encounters that she's not really sure what it is yet. Now, the other interesting thing about this book is that it does have an interesting take on angels. Within the description of this book, within the talking about these characters, there's really no good introduction to be able to talk about the fact that there are angels, but there is a whole angelic storyline, and the angels do have something to do with the prophecy of the Sun Queen and the Blood Queen. Now, the cool thing about the angels in this whole series is they are not the angels that you would stereotypically find as far as good versus evil characters. These angels, the people fear them, and the kinds of power that they hold over humans is absolutely feared. That in the entire history of the world, even before this Riel timeline, the entire history of this world, the angels were fought, they were forced into their lands, and this magical ward was placed on the border of their land so that angels could no longer get into the world of men. And what's happening in this story is that the angels have been gaining power and are starting to infiltrate the world of men again. And it's a very fearful time for a lot of human beings because of the kind of power that the angels wielded over one another. No matter what, the angels are still treated as a myth. The power that they hold is still a legend, a fairy tale, a fantasy. So that's what makes them also so dangerous, is because people are not really taking them seriously. And I thought that was a really cool, interesting piece to the world building that you may not get from the synopsis of this book. All right, so let's talk about the characters. I have the two main characters that we follow, and then we have a lot of secondary characters that we follow within both timelines. The first character that we follow is Riel. She is the character that takes place 1,000 years in the past. Riel finds herself to have this kind of magical power that her father knew about, there's a religious man who also knew about that, who was in cahoots with her father, and they have trained Riel from a very young age to try and control this power. They're very, very antsy around her, very anxious about the way that she uses her power, because in this world, really, the Crown Prince and his family, they're supposed to be the most powerful magic wielders, but they know that the power that Riel has is vastly more powerful than what most other characters are able to do. So she grows up trying to subdue her power, and it's just not working because her power has been building and building and building, and there's just literally no outlet for it until it outwardly bursts from her in a moment of panic, in a moment of terror, and all of a sudden the whole world knows that she has this power. In her storyline, because people have just found out that she has this incredibly vast power, and that this power does hearken to this myth of the Sun Queen and the Blood Queen, they put her through 7 trials to try and determine if she is one of these prophesied queens. I really liked her as a character. She was, I want to say she was like soft and delicate, but strong-willed. She wasn't like completely bullheaded. She had her own group of friends. She had her friend, the Crown Prince. She had her friend, his cousin, and she was in love with the Crown Prince, but the Crown Prince is engaged to his cousin, and it was this whole triad between the three that it was like, it could have turned really messy, but it really wasn't. All 3 of them knew their relationship to one another, and none of the 3 of them tried to pretend any different. It was just the outside forces wanted them all to be something that they were not. So they had a really great friendship. They had a really great romantic dynamic. There was like no jealousy involved. It was just a really refreshing kind of triangle to read about. Then we get Elena 1,000 years later. Elena does not care about the Sun Queen or the Blood Queen prophecy because she is a bounty hunter, like I said. She is living in a world that has been directly affected by this prophecy 1,000 years later. She is living in this really oppressive regime, and the way that she provides for her family is by bounty hunting. That's how she makes her money. She knows it's very volatile. Her mother ended up training her in this. Her brother understands what she's doing, but like, nobody's really stopping her, even though they know it's a really dangerous thing, because they all know that's how there's a roof over their head. She is about to perform this bounty. This like rebel regime within the empire has gotten in contact with her, and they end up capturing her and her brother because her mother has been taken, and they have to unwillingly ally with one another to try and get to the bottom of what's happening within the empire. So again, this timeline had some really cool technologies, like she uses guns and weapons. This is like not something that I encounter a lot in young adult fantasy, at least. So I thought that was really great. There are angelic characters that we do end up meeting. And that's how we know that there's this fear and this mistrust. And there's angelic characters in both timelines, so I don't really want to spoil all of that. But it's kind of cool to see how, like, our future timeline, we're kind of spoiled because we know the event that has already happened in the past. Like, we're already vastly aware of what is going to happen to all of these characters in the past in our future timeline, but we just don't know how they're going to connect yet. So this whole book has been like building and building and building to try and get us back into the same path, and we're almost there at the end, but we're not quite, which I thought was really great. So overall, I did rate this book 5 out of 5 stars. There's so much good stuff here. There's 2 really great, strong storylines taking place that it was so exciting to read that I could not put this book down. This moves very fast. It's a 500-page book, but you would never know it. It just reads so fast. There's not ever a good time to put this book down. It just always kept me on the edge of my seat, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I did give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I'm very excited to begin Kingsbane, which is the 2nd book in the series. And I'll be interested to see, like, if we'll figure out more of these angels and figure out, like, what their magic is about. I'm interested to get closer to, like, the spoilery part that we all know as readers, because again, these 2 timelines are just kind of barreling toward this point. I'm really excited to get to know a secondary character in Elena's timeline a little bit better. So overall, like I said, 5 out of 5 stars. Really great start to a new trilogy by Claire Legrand. Really great YA trilogy. This one, I think, even if you don't like to read YA, this doesn't have like too many cliches in it that if you're like an adult fantasy reader and just don't want to get caught up in some YA cliches, I don't think you'll find many of them in here, and that's another reason why I really enjoyed this book. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend Furyborn, written by Claire Legrand. Let me know if you've read Furyborn. Let me know what you think about Claire Legrand's books. I think she has a really unique way of, there's this darkness to her writing that is not like super obvious, but you can just kind of feel it within the storyline. That's why I like this like dark take on angels. That's why I like knowing a little bit about the plot line and just seeing like how our characters are actually going to get there. There's just so much good stuff within this story that if you haven't picked it up yet, I really think you should. But if you have picked it up, let me know what you think about it in the comments section below. If you want to follow along with me on my social media to see when I pick up Kingsbane, you can follow me on my Twitter and Instagram. It's at whatcassread. It's the same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. You can also find me on Goodreads. That link is listed down below, and you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.